Now, Washington Mornings on the Mall. 105.9 FM. And AM 630. WMAL.
It is 7:07 on WMAL, where Washington comes to talk. Brian Wilson, Brian Neiman. We're joined on the phone now by Joe DiGenova, our legal analyst, our legal expert, an all-round swell fellow. How are you, Joe?
Good morning, everybody.
All right, I want to talk about this thing that happened over at the Family Research Council the other day. A guy named Corkins walks in, tries to talk his way in. He's stopped by a guard, shoots the guard, and the guard still takes him down. Quite a hero there. What can happen to this guy? And is this a case? I noticed that this morning the reporting is that he's going to have some kind of mental evaluation. What do you read into all that?
Well, the judge is being careful by submitting him to a mental evaluation. He's facing, first of all, just the initial charges are assault with intent to kill while armed, which is a D.C. code offense. That's a 30-year felony. Then he has federal gun charges of transporting weapons and ammunition illegally across state lines. Those are 5- and 10-year felonies. He's facing a very substantial period of time. So I think I don't think there's going to be any insanity defense here. This guy does not appear to be unhinged, unlike some people in the Democratic Party who are unhinged. Mm-hmm. He is not unhinged, and I think he's going to be facing even more serious charges when the grand jury meets.
Is this a hate crime?
Oh, I don't think there's any question about it, and it should be classified as a hate crime. This was done, a hate crime, by the way, is defined by the U.S. Code as a crime of violence against people or property with an element of hate based on race, religion, disability, ethnic origins, or sexual orientation. I don't think there's any question that religion is at the base of this hatred, and there's just no question that it is. And not only that, it's domestic terrorism in the sense that he was attempting, obviously, to get into the building to injure or kill a number of people.
All right, that's your opinion. Do you believe that they'll actually file those charges?
Well, probably not, because, as you know, the FBI and the Justice Department under this administration have taken a very limited view of left-wing terrorism. They don't call it that. They call it something else. Look at Fort Hood. That was called workplace violence, a laughable description, an embarrassment to the Justice Department and the FBI, and an insult to all the victims there. So I do not expect them to label this either domestic terrorism or a hate crime.
Does it make a difference that there was only one injury involved when you go after a domestic terrorism charge?
It could theoretically make a difference, but it shouldn't under these circumstances, given the fact that it is fairly obvious that he was motivated by hate speech created by the Southern Poverty Law Center, which lists the Family Research Council, as you can believe it, on its website as a hate group, which I think actually leads the Southern Poverty Law Center to be suable at this point by the Family Research Council for huge civil damages.
All right, let me stop you there. What evidence do we have to suggest that he was motivated by their words, the Southern Poverty Law Center?
Well, first of all, you start with the fact that the Southern Poverty Law Center is well known in the groups that this gentleman, and I use the term advisedly, gentleman, belongs to.
Right.
There is I have read some evidence that he was a frequent visitor to their website. We will find out whether or not that is true, and if it is true, then they will have responsibility. But theoretically, they would have some responsibility for actions taken by others. And for example,
why?
The Southern Poverty Law Center is not an official government agency. They do not enjoy immunity. The fact that they call somebody a hate group makes them liable for their statement.
Why? Just because they call somebody a hate group and some guy goes with a gun to try and do damage there, why would they be liable? I mean, it's just their words that they're using. It's rhetoric. Why should they be responsible?
They can say whatever they want.
Right.
That's the whole theory. However, once they say something, and if it is proven that the gentleman was motivated, at least in part, by what they have said, when that accusation by the Southern Poverty Law Center has no basis in fact that they are a hate group, because remember, the United States government does not list the Family Research Council as a hate group. If the government listed them as a hate group, the Southern Poverty Law Center would have immunity from being sued civilly by the Family Research Council. And I would encourage the Family Research Council to sue
Really?
the Southern Poverty Law. Absolutely.
I got to tell you, Joe, that concerns me greatly. I mean, I don't agree at all with what the Southern Poverty Law Center has said and the way they've characterized the Family Research Council. But you know what? If they want to do that, and it's rhetoric, and it's their opinion, they can put it out there. And then to connect that to this guy for the reasoning behind that, I mean, then what you're saying is that anybody who says something bad or says something over the top about another group, and somebody acts, on their own will, then they're somehow responsible. I mean, could a radio host be responsible if they say something outlandish at one time or another, or continually say that? I mean, that worries me greatly.
That's okay. You should be worried. You have to prove causation in the civil court. Remember, what I'm talking about is the right to sue for damages, not the right to lock somebody up or accuse them of a crime. The Southern Poverty Law Center does not have total license to say and do whatever they want. None of us does. That's why there are libel laws. In fact, the Family Research Council has a right to sue for libel for being called.
Libel I can completely understand and agree with you on. You can sue for libel, but somehow to have them connected to the shooting, to me, is kind of a stretch and worrisome.
That would require some proof. We may not be there yet, but my point is, and I'll underscore this, I think that the Family Research Council should explore civil litigation against the Southern Poverty Law Center. They should. I'm sure they have counsel. And I will bet you they are pursuing the idea, and they're gathering evidence to see whether or not such a lawsuit, either for libel or for hate criminal. There are civil statutes that allow civil suits, by the way, for hate speech. Those statutes exist now in almost every state, and this might be an interesting one. And by the way, I agree with you. We have to be very careful about what we prosecute people for. But as far as civil litigation goes, you have to be careful as well. But believe me, I think the Family Research Council has the beginnings of a very good lawsuit.
But are there criminal charges possible against the Southern Poverty Law Center?
No, absolutely not. Not to my knowledge, because that's a much higher standard. They would have to be actually involved in speaking with this guy who fired the weapon and encouraging him to do it. There's no evidence of that, and I don't believe that they've committed a crime, but they may have committed a civil offense.
I want to ask one quick question. It's been sort of the fun discussion around town about Joe Biden, whether he's in, whether he's out, whether he's going to be replaced by Hillary. Just from a legal standpoint, what would have to happen if Hillary were to replace Joe Biden on the ticket?
Well, first of all, since he is a sitting vice president, there wouldn't be a confirmation process because he would be removed at the time of the convention. He would be legally nominated, and he would be on the ticket, or she would be on the ticket. If he were removed now, there wouldn't be enough time for a confirmation process so that you would have a vice president like Nelson Rockefeller, who was confirmed by the Senate to replace Gerald Ford when Ford became president, when Ford had been confirmed to replace Agnew. That process would not be necessary. He would be put on Hillary Clinton would be put on the ticket at the convention and then would be voted into office. That's how that would occur.
It would have to have, am I correct, confirmation by the House and Senate if in some cases?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's what the Constitution says.
All right, Joe, it's great to have you. Thanks for coming on a Friday. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. And just one more thing. This guy, Tory, that you guys were talking about.
Oh, yeah, Tory. Yeah, right.
Yeah. More people heard about him this morning than saw him on MSNBC.
Well, you may be right.